Do you know that you do not need to spend hours writing emails, Instagram captions, and wholesale promos every month? You can actually batch all of your marketing content in under an hour. No more blank docs, no more I'll just post later. Just swipe, tweak, and go. The Product Marketing Bank is your marketing shortcut. A done for you vault of high converting email copy, promo templates, sales strategies, and social media hooks. Custom built for wholesale brands. And yes, you'll even be shown exactly how to repurpose everything for your direct to consumer audience, saving you hours of time and energy. The Marketing Bank helps you show up with strategic, seasonal content exactly when your retailers are planning their buys. If you're tired of Googling, what do I even say in this email? It's time to let the Product Marketing Bank do the heavy lifting for you. Join now at productmarketingbank.com.
And I think sometimes when we get too caught up in the chase and we're in that scarcity where we're just like, I want, and we're not getting into the service mentality, like we sabotage ourselves without even realizing it. The hunt for the money causes us to completely lose the money. It's so funny and frustrating because it's like, well, how do I have these goals though? Like, how do I have this desire to have this success, but then like not focus on it or not think about it or obsess about it? And I think it's, you cast the vision and you let go of the how.
Hi, friends. Welcome to She Sells Differently, the show for aspiring women entrepreneurs looking to overcome the fear of selling and grow thriving businesses from a place of authenticity and confidence. I'm Andee Hart, and it wasn't all that long ago that I was a sales executive for a Fortune 500 company. But I knew in my heart that I was called to use my gifts for something more, something different. That's exactly why I created the She Sells Differently podcast. Each episode is going to deliver you business strategies, tools, and mindset shifts to help set you and your brand apart from our culture's expectations. It's time to elevate your sales and build a profitable, sustainable business you're proud of, one built on integrity, grace, and humility. It's time to learn how to sell differently. Thanks so much for joining another episode of the She Sells Differently podcast. So blessed to have you here. I have an amazing guest, Kirsten Tyrell, that is joining us. She is a creator on Millionaire University, which is a podcast that helps entrepreneurial minds graduate rich and not broke. And she has built multiple successful businesses using the principles taught on the show, and now helps others do the same. As an emotional intelligence coach, she teaches ambitious mothers how to build lasting success without sacrificing their values. Kirsten believes true success isn't about pushing harder, it's about building differently. A mother of three, she lives in the Red Hills of Utah and loves traveling as often as possible, which I can relate to because I love that too. So, Kirsten, welcome to the She Sells Differently show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. This is, I don't know about you, but it's one of my favorite things to go and guest because it's like, I just get to sit on your couch, have a conversation. I don't have to think about the questions, but I get to have you on our show in a few weeks, which will be equally fun. So thanks for having me.
I am so excited about that. Yes. And I'm excited to dive in because it's rare sometimes, but I read your bio and I was like, I relate to that. I relate to that. I relate to that. And so I was so excited for this interview because it really just dives into so much of what She Sells Differently is about. And so I'm big on emotional intelligence, and we were talking about before we started recording, but we have not had anyone really dive into that topic. And so we are going to spend some time talking about that today. So
yes,
excited
love
about it. Yes. So tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. And it's being an emotional intelligence coach is so inspiring, but tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, how we got to this point.
Yes.
Well, as you can maybe guess, the reason you're always drawn to things that you need. And so after like over a decade of entrepreneurship, really 15 years, I've been a mom for 15 years. I've been an entrepreneur the whole entire time and prior to that. And I think you just go through the very real roller coaster of emotions that come along with building businesses, having humongous failures. If you haven't had a failure yet, like consider yourself blessed. It's coming though. Like there's always
Yes.
going to be, it's coming. Don't think you're immune. I used to think that like, oh man, I just like success was so quick and fast and I
Right?
jinxed myself. Yeah. And so a little bit of my background, which kind of ties even with Millionaire University, I was telling you before, I'm like the poster child because when I was a photographer in Southern California, I was hired to do podcast cover art. I didn't even know how to listen to a podcast. This is like almost 10 years ago. And we show up on the beach and I'm taking pictures of this couple, which I had previously researched like corporate headshots with a couple. They're jumping up and down on the beach. And I'm like, what do these people do? Like, what am I doing here? And so naturally, my curiosity led to me being like, what is a podcast? I need to see my work, on this cover art. And came across it, started binging the podcast, which then was called 8-Minute Millionaire. And the podcasts were short and sweet. And it was like, learn how to become a millionaire in a matter of like 8 minutes in these little increments. They were interviewing these huge entrepreneurs, Grant Cardone, Pat Flynn, Russell Brunson, the OGs in this like online
Yeah.
business world. And I immediately just dove in and it was like school. It really was. I had gone to college, had a degree, but this was like the level up to that. And I just got completely immersed in it and decided, well, this is pretty cool. Like, I'm going to start my own podcast. I'm not going to share that stuff, but I want to talk to moms and I want to share their inspiring stories. And I needed that for myself too. Like, you're in the trenches of motherhood, raising little people, and I needed adult conversation. So I dove in and I started recording 5 episodes a week. I learned a ton from Justin and Tara about growing an email list and all these things that were just completely new to my vocabulary. And we'll kind of go back to that point in time eventually, but that led to a tremendously huge network. It opened all the doors for me that are still open to this day because of the women that I connected with and could not have foreseen what that was going to do. But because I just dove in and went for it, like I full blown became an entrepreneur and have been able to support my family, sometimes completely full time, sometimes more in the realm of a side hustle. And that's really kind of coming back to what we're talking about today. Lots of those ups and downs. And one of the particular really low points sent me into a pretty heavy, like dark spiral. And I mean, you could call it depression, you could call it anxiety. Really, at the end of the day, I was completely stuck. And I was living in that reality of this thing that had happened. Even after all the circumstances were done, I was like, okay, it's over. Now I'll just go rebuild something new. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Like, why even though I know what to do and I have the knowledge and I have all the motivation, am I completely stuck? Or I'll get going and then I sabotage. And it took about 5 years. And a year ago, my dad passed away really unexpectedly. And recognizing like that I was going to probably find myself in this emotional tailspin, actually really not even recognizing it. It just, the timing lined up. I ended up going to a mastermind retreat. There was a woman there who emotional intelligence was her thing. And I was like, I think this is the missing piece for me. Because I can mindset, I can Mr. Miyagi my way, right? Through so many things. But why, even though I know how to have a good mindset, am I trapped? And she saw things and she was able to just tell me, she's like, I bet you've tried to rebuild so many businesses and I bet you get to a certain point and you burn the thing to the ground. And I was like, how do you know that? And she was like, because it's classic. Like you had success became dangerous. And now you're trying to sabotage before anybody else can sabotage you again. And so she explained what was probably happening in my body. And I was thinking, okay, like, how does this woman know? So I ended up going through her coaching program, loved it so much, decided to certify because I was like, this has been the missing piece. I have never wanted to project my own stuff onto women when I coach them, right? Like I said, I'm a master mindset coach. And yet I feel like it's so personalized and individual. And we leave out this component of the physical body because our bodies hold in traumatic experiences. They everything sinks in, betrayals, setbacks, childhood things about who we think we are. It's all at play in how we're showing up. And we sit there. And I think for me, like I took on the role and I decided I'm an entrepreneur now. I'm a millionaire. I'm going to behave this way. And there is power in that. There's power in just like being the thing and then doing the thing so you have the outcome. And like I said, going back a little bit to when I first started working with Justin and Tara, although she was teaching me some really good tangible stuff, like grow an email list, and I'm like, I don't even know what that means. grew one on accident. My husband put a pop-up on the website. A couple years later, he's like, you have 1,200 people on your list. Cool. But the thing that was the most impactful in talking to her was I asked a really profound question, which at the time I didn't know it was so profound. And it was like, what does it feel like to be a millionaire? What is your day-to-day like? What is it? Just explain it to me. And so she described, like, you can go to a restaurant. You don't have to order based on how cheap the food is. You can order what actually sounds good to you. If that's prime rib, you're getting prime rib. And you can go shopping and you're not having to decide what you want to buy based on what's on the tag. It's based on what you really want. And a couple years later, because in that moment that had become so real to me and I embodied that, and it was like that reality became the reality, and the things that I was experiencing for real, for real in the 3D world. Walking into my crummy 2-bedroom apartment, I was like, I don't live here. I live in a mansion up on the higher end of Orange County. And that was like so real to me that it carried me through all the things that I had to do. And it wasn't easy. Like there were so many hard days, but that picture was so emotionally connected. It went beyond writing stuff down in a journal, having a vision board, and it was my life, right? Like it was who I was to my core. And so you think about how you build that. And I think I was so close. Like I think I was 90% there. But then you get wrapped up in the tangibles. You start going through the motions, building the thing, you have the success. And then the identity became so attached to the circumstances that when the circumstances changed, the identity crumbled. And I had to go back and rebuild. And so when I say building differently, I was very invested in that, like ClickFunnels, bro marketing-esque, like hustle your way, like you can do it. Don't save yourself, like do the hard work. And I think that while that is not completely bad or wrong, I believed in the value of hard work. I think now I look back and there's a sorrow at, first of all, how I engaged with building the first initial dream, because I think there was some quicksand there where I didn't really know beyond making money and having those things, like what do I want for my whole life? What do I want spiritually, physically, personally? And also has how I navigated the loss, how I navigated the bad experiences. And I stayed in those trenches for years. And now that I have the tools that I have that have helped me navigate, my dad passing away was such a different experience than business loss. And I would argue that was way harder, like that's very final and very, very, very hard. But I don't have this physical reaction. I don't shake when I talk about my dad dying. I can talk about that night. I can talk about all of the worst parts of that experience. And I emotionally haven't held on to it, so it doesn't like feel trapped. And previous to that, when I would talk about the business and the things that had gone wrong, I would literally just shake and I would have to like stop and I'd have to breathe. And so I think there's so much power in, I know I just threw so much at you, like the whole entire story, but I know we don't have super long. So I just wanted to dive into the meat of it. And that is how you build differently. There has to be a clear vision of who you are. You have to know who you are outside of the roles that you're taking on, the things that you're good at, and you have to like bring the body along for the ride. There has to be alignment with the mind and the body.
There's so much to unpack there that is so good. I'm actually curious, and I think any of my listeners that are dialed into what you just said are thinking for themselves, like they're hearing what you just said, and they're probably nodding their heads going, Kirsten, I feel that to my core, but I don't even know where to start in how to unpack everything that I'm feeling with my failures, my past, and how to even get started down that journey. So maybe kind of start there. Like, how do you even get started? If you're sitting across the table from one of my listeners, what would you say to them?
Oh my gosh, that's a loaded question in and of itself, right? Because we'd have to start with like, where are you at? Like, what's the status? Like, are we stuck? There's even points where you can be very successful. And I've been there where you're making tons of money and you're almost feeling uncomfortable with that because there's a lack of alignment there. You have these old stories. And so with the people that I work with and when I say people I work with, officially and unofficially, like if you're my hairdresser, we're talking about this. If you are my kid's friend's mom, we're talking about this because it's just so much a part of human just beingness, right? And so I think it would really just be like if there's a specific instance, I really help people shift their stories. And you might call it a mindset shift, but to me, I feel like stories go deep. They're connected to past experiences, characters in our story, emotional things that have happened. And so a lot of times we start to behave and we start to act throughout our lives based on those stories. And if you've ever seen Inside Out 2, particularly, like our stories and our experiences become our beliefs, and our beliefs are such a part of our character. And so I, for a long time, several years, have, even as I was early going through this process of business trauma specifically, I had to start looking at that objectively. And I had to start saying, like, this isn't absolutely true. Like, I can't be 100% right, even in this situation or in any situation in my life. So what is the story I'm believing? And a lot of times you can tell how important the story is by the emotional response that you're having to it.
Right.
And so as you're like thinking through this belief you have or this story you have about a person, about a situation, also pay attention to what's physically happening inside of your body. And like, I don't think you have to do this deep dive into your past and go into like a hypnosis, therapy treatment necessarily and bring up the originating experience. That might happen. You might eventually realize, oh my gosh, this is where this comes from. But I think more so just like, even right now, what is the body believing and what is the mind believing? Because every feeling starts with a thought, whether you think it did or not. I think the closest thing I've come to feeling like that's not true is grief. I think grief like lives in the body. And I think you don't have to consciously be thinking about it for your heart to feel broken. But most other things, like we're starting with thoughts. And so I encourage people to question that, to say like, what is the story you're telling yourself right now? I'll give you an example. I have a friend that was talking about how anxious she is because her husband just doesn't take care of himself. He's working so hard all the time. And she's like, I just wish he would do this. And I said, okay, what's in your control? Like, what is the story there? And the powerful thing is when you move this from like they should to I should, there's this light that goes on where you're like, okay, he should take care of himself. I should take care of myself. Or even I should take care of him. That's something that's within your control. And then you can start to unpack that. So there's kind of two different concepts in there. There's like the story that needs to shift, and there's the reason we're attached to it. Like there is the physical baggage that's being carried with the belief system that we have, and you have to address both. So it's just starting to become more aware. I don't know if you meditate, if your listeners meditate, it's hard because our minds are producing like 80 million thoughts a day or something. Maybe it's 80,000. It's a lot of thoughts that are swimming through our brains.
Yeah.
And one of the things that has helped me is to picture yourself like standing on a riverbank and you're just watching the thoughts. You like picture them as their own little things just drifting down like fish or whatever. And just stepping away from it and being aware of like, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What's happening as like an objective third party can start to show you what needs to be addressed. And feeling the sensations in your body, you can totally start to honor that instead of suppress it. I think as women in business specifically, we've come into a very masculine world, right? Like we're still pretty new to this world. We've done some really cool things. But I think that we don't honor the sensitivity. We don't honor the emotions that come with that. And the stories we've been told throughout our lives about what we can or can't do as women, as mothers, as entrepreneurs. And so I think breaking those things down and seeing where that lives inside the body as we come up against hard things is where you start. It's just awareness.
Yes.
It's a powerful thing.
Yes. I also think you just, to me, encapsulated emotional intelligence, one of the aspects of emotional intelligence so well. And you said shifting from what can they do to what can I do? Like really owning and taking responsibility, no matter what the situation. That's one of the core, facets from my perspective of emotional intelligence, of owning responsibility for what you can do in a situation. And I think that that's really wise to point that out in the example that you gave. And then you were talking about, as women in business. And I think about, I spent 17 years in corporate world, and I've been an entrepreneur now for a year and a half. So it's really, I still kind of feel like a baby entrepreneur, right? And I think a lot of the trauma and the stress and the things that I have faced have been from my time in corporate America. And I was in a very, very male-dominated segment of corporate America. So it was amplified, tech sales. And so technology, and so I think back about the things that and I have even gone through counseling and to deal with a lot of that. And, I'm not afraid to even say that. And so I think that there's just such wisdom to what you were saying, is to even embrace just the beauty of how God created women,
Yeah.
and just there is beauty in that, because we are uniquely created and designed, and to embrace that
Yeah.
is a gift. It's a gift,
Yep. It really is. Yeah. And I think there's that component, and just individuals, like as individuals, you have so much life experience that is going to either make or break you, right? Like I had this thought today that what you believe about yourself can be the worst thing ever, and it can also be the best thing ever. And it's all a
Yes.
matter of like what you're choosing to identify as. And in my business, I have done a ton of marketing, and one of those things is creating quizzes for people. It's a great lead
Mhm.
magnet. I love it so
Yes.
much. I love getting to know people, human psychology. It's probably why I love doing coaching as well in the emotional intelligence sphere, because I just think we're fascinating creatures. But one of the downfalls of that when we go through these things is we start taking on all of these labels, and we lose the inherent things about who we are that you can't categorize, or that, like we start downplaying some of our genius and some of our brilliance and our beauty in even our trauma and our bad experiences that have
Yes.
made us stronger and more powerful, because we try to like suppress that down. That doesn't belong here, right? I'm here to do my business. I can't have that creeping in here. I can't be vulnerable in this way. I have to be professional. So I think even, yes, honoring us as women and how we build differently, right? Like all of us, though, like to your point of your show, all of us should sell differently because we're all individual and we come with a totally
Mhm.
different, like, compounding of experiences. And when you honor that instead of trying to suppress it, that's how you're going to stand out. That's how you're going to own your space. It's how you're going to just magnify people to you. And I think that it's something that when you try to fight and you try to like just stay in this rigid box and we don't bring emotion into it, and we're fighting those past things, then yeah, it gets in the way, and it can really stall us, and you can end up where I was, where you're stuck because I don't want to feel the hard stuff and I don't want to process that, and then it's just you're carrying
Yes.
on with these very superficial identities.
Yes. That is so well said. I love that. So, what are some common emotional triggers that hold entrepreneurs back? And
Oh man.
how can we reframe those triggers to move forward, as we're kind of talking about stress and grief and, dealing with that? How can we reframe those as we move forward?
Okay, so I feel like there's almost categories, right? I had a friend text me and she was like, "I think that all the grief that I've gone through, she's had a lot of child loss, is getting in the way of my business." And I think that right there is powerful awareness that we are not like able to compartmentalize, like I was saying. And so I think there's going to be just common big triggers like grief, death, loss, divorce. We are living in a world where life's just not easy for anyone. Like it's
Yeah.
not. We're all going through something hard as we're building business. So there's that category of like, it may not be directly correlated with your business, but it's still triggering the way that you show up. Maybe you are dealing with grief and you're going through something really difficult. I think the common triggers that are going to attack who you are as a person, those are the things that you need to address. Like, obviously, we need to emotionally regulate. I should not show up on a podcast interview if I'm feeling really heavily, like if I'm feeling really heavy grief today, or I'm
Mhm.
just non-functional, right? But at the same time, rather than having to shut life down every time that hard thing happens, you have a terrible conversation with somebody you're divorcing or whatever. Like the beautiful thing is there's ways within like 2 or 3 minutes to bring yourself back to the present. And I think typically a lot of us think, oh, that's it. Like this terrible thing happened. I got this phone call. This happened at the kids' school. This stress, I looked at my bank account right before getting on a pitch, for a new client. And now I'm like in this scarcity mode. And what's so powerful about this is you don't have to succumb to it and you don't have to resist it. You just utilize that as power. And so you physically pay attention. What's going on inside of my body when I'm thinking these thoughts, when I'm doing these things, when I have this trigger come up, and you address the symptom. So if you're suddenly like really hot, go run your hands under cold water. If you're suddenly like really cold and you just freeze up, there's the fight, flight, and freeze responses, right? And
Mhm.
so your body physically needs to honor that. And so if you even just pay attention to what am I doing as I'm experiencing this, I could have come on and like 20 minutes ago have been feeling really heavily weighed down by grief today. And if I honor that and said, I need to cry or I need to scream, I can spend 2 minutes. For me, I'm a fighter and I love to slam a medicine ball. Like my kids all know the sound. They hear dunk. don't. And I'll typically put noise canceling headphones on so I feel safe. I don't feel like somebody's going to come in and judge me. And I'll blast that music and I will go through the whole song and I will just slam the medicine ball during the chorus and I will breathe. And I get myself back into a place where I can show up because I don't know about you, but my life can't just pause every time I have an emotion. And if I push it down by the end of the day, who's going to get the brunt of that? Like the people I care about, the people who I'm building the very business for. And so there's that. There's those external things that are constantly happening to us that are always going to be a part of life. You can't isolate yourself. And then even within business as an entrepreneur, like you're going to run up against things all the time. I see fear of content creation. I see fear around money, receiving it, spending it, whatever, right? Pitching yourself, doing the things that are necessary to grow a thriving business. Your podcast talks about sales, right? Like we need to sell differently. There's so many emotional barriers to that. I was just telling my husband the other day, I've had 2 recent experiences where people sold me and I'm not happy about it. Like I don't love the tactics and it puts a bad taste in my mouth.
Yes.
And it worked. But after the fact, when I come back into my logical brain, I'm like, I don't like that you totally just manipulated me. And so if I don't honor that, if I don't address and have recognition for that, what am I now going to believe about selling? How am I going to show up to my potential client call? If I feel like I have this story over here that selling is so gross and people just manipulate me. So there's like multiple ways that I can unpack that, right? I can see like, where's this coming from? Like, why am I now villainizing this person who sold me? Did I actually get like ripped off or taken advantage of? What did I not like about that? Okay, well, do I have to show up that way? Do I have another option? And like, why do I physically feel this way? Is there something that's happened where I feel taken advantage of when I've gotten sold to? What are the stories based on history? You know what I'm saying? Like there's a process you can go through to just understand that it doesn't mean, and I think we do this, we attach meaning and stories to something and make it a belief. We make it a whole way that we live our lives. Well, I can't sell because I don't like people who sell. I'm not a salesperson. That's gross. Right. And so I think understanding like what about that was triggering. So for me, I can look at, I don't like that there was fake urgency and scarcity. I'm tired of being like pushed into something because we're using fake urgency and scarcity. So I'm not going to use that. And also like, why do I not like fake urgency and scarcity? Well, because it takes trust away. Because then later when I saw that I didn't have to hurry and jump into that decision, I feel like I wasn't allowed to honor like my own decision-making process because I was not operating in like a clear head. And maybe I would have done it a little bit differently. I still probably would have bought, but it would have felt a little bit different. And so I think it's always asking, one of my favorite questions is, so what? Like, okay, so this happened, so what? Like, what does that mean for you? It's never just the surface thing where you're like, I hate people being sold to, or I hate being sold to. There's a reason for that. There's something really uncomfortable that it brings up. There's a memory stored somewhere. And so I know that was like a long roundabout way to answer your question, but I think when you're addressing those things, it's just getting deeper to the root, not going nuts, not having to, like I said, reverse like hypnosis, but just kind of starting to question like what made me uncomfortable about that or what is really going on here. It's not just that I'm afraid to be seen on camera. There's something deeper there. And when you can get to the root of that and find the emotional tie, then you can work through it.
And that makes me cringe as like, as a sales expert, you should never, ever feel manipulated after a sales transaction, like ever. And so that's, like hit on like the exact reason that this podcast exists. So, that's, and do those, end up resulting in sales? Sure. That's why they exist. But I think it goes back to, you win the battle, but you lose the war. Right. So it's not the long game of building relationships and truly serving people. So, you hit on something a minute ago that I want to talk about because it really weaves into emotional intelligence as well, and something that we all struggle with as entrepreneurs. And you talked about just struggling with financial success. And so what do you see that most entrepreneurs get wrong when it comes to financial success? And how can we shift our focus to create true personal and financial freedom as entrepreneurs?
This is something we talk a lot about over on Millionaire University, actually. And Justin is one of the creators of the show, and they were my original mentors. I don't remember if I bridged that. Like, we're now in Millionaire University, which is what, 10 years later, 8 years
Crazy.
later, a spinoff of that I was originally like a student of, and now I'm a mentor over there because I went through it, right? You live the life and you now have so much to share. And that's something we talk about because I think there's this philosophy, like there's a million ways to make $1 million. And if you try to do them all, you're not going to make any money. And so I think there's something to be said about having a clear vision for where you're going. And like, I mean, we can teach all the strategies. I can tell you how to start a podcast and make money. I can tell you how to start a blog and make money. And I think it comes down to like when you're only chasing the money. And this again goes to what I said, building differently. Because at first I was thinking, okay, well, I now have this belief system. I could become a millionaire. And so I got so laser focused on the millionaire status, the making of the money, all the things that I would have, that I really, if I look back, there's like some choices I made. And I don't know that I would make them differently necessarily, but I think I would have made them similar to what I said about sales, right? I probably still would have done the same thing, but I think had I done it with the proper alignment, if I had done that with a vision of the whole picture of where I was going, where I take into consideration, these are my professional dreams, and this is also my personal dream for my life. These are my spiritual like standards. This is what I physically want to show up like. And I think if you can come back to that and you stay in your lane and you do something that is really solving a problem that you're passionate about, there's alignment there in so many different ways, the money naturally follows. And I think sometimes when we get too caught up in the chase and we're in that scarcity where we're just like, I want, and we're not getting into the service mentality, like we sabotage ourselves without even realizing it. The hunt for the money causes us to completely lose the money. It's so funny and frustrating because it's like, well, how do I have these goals though? Like, how do I have this desire to have this success, but then like not focus on it or not think about it or obsess about it? And I think it's, you cast the vision and you let go of the how. And I think a lot of us don't want to do this. And if you look back through my journals when I first started, there are so many plans laid out. For example, we were selling on Amazon. We were doing Amazon FBA. That was one of our very first little side hustles. Like, let's see if this works. Totally worked. And then we had all these people wanting to learn from us. So we decided, let's make like $100,000 selling our course on how to do Amazon FBA because we were past the point of being able to coach one-on-one. 2 days later, Amazon shuts down the opportunity for new sellers. And I'm just like, slam the book. Like, well, there you go. See, I can't have my thing. How am I ever going to make $1 million if I can't even make 100,000? And I look back now and I'm like, it sounds so overly simplistic, but if you do detach from how and you just do the next right thing, you're going to continue doing the next right thing as long as it's aligned with vision and as long as you know where you're going. So I don't know if that directly answered your question, but I think as entrepreneurs, we can get really lost in the shuffle of getting and we can lose ourselves in the process.
Yeah. And I have felt caught in that too, even in that almost feeling desperate. And I think when you start doing that, you make bad decisions. And also too, you can make things more complex than they need to be.
Yeah.
And I'm even in the process right now. And like I said, I'm just a year and a half in, but in the process of simplifying.
Oh my gosh.
Because I have a couple of really great core offerings that are amazing. And why do I need some of these other things? Like, no, let's get them out of the way. And these are things that I thought that were going to be really game changing for my business. But why am I focusing on those things? Because, the human mind we can't do it all. We cannot do it all. So it's very, very interesting. I think it is a process, but to your point, simplifying and focusing on serving well,
the ego wants to do everything. Like, just because you can though, doesn't mean you should. And I think it can be really easy to get caught up in that where you don't dig deep into the one thing. And we're doing this over on Millionaire University right now. Like in the podcasting world, that's changed. I started my first show 9 years ago. It's a very different world now compared to what it used to be. And I'm not even doing my personal podcast at this point because I had to do what you're saying. I had to simplify. And one of the cool things that happens when you do that as an entrepreneur, where you cut the fluff, on our
Yes.
show, like we're having massive success. Every episode is a moneymaker because, and we share this very vulnerably. Like Justin shares our behind the scenes, the status, our exact strategy, what we're doing to grow this as like a media company. And by putting so much more focus and digging deeper into the same hole, instead of like digging 80,000 different holes, we're really making some huge traction. And at some point, like we could totally coach people on how to build a profitable podcast without even using social media, without a huge like email list or anything like that, because you dig deep into that one thing. But if you think about why, and I tell my clients this sometimes, they're like, oh, but this is an opportunity. And I'm like, is it an option or is it an opportunity? And you need to know
Yes.
the difference.
Wow. Is it
Yeah.
an option or is it an opportunity? Like you need to coin that phrase, Kirsten.
I know. I
Yeah.
really do. I'm like, I hope I'm like such a sponge. I think they came up with that, but I would not be surprised if it existed somewhere. So we'll just put a little TM or whatever you put by that quote.
I think that's brilliant. Is it an option or is it an opportunity? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
well said. So, and kind of wrapping up, if you had to distill your biggest lesson in emotional intelligence and entrepreneurship into one guiding principle, what would it be?
Oh, man.
That's a tough question, isn't it?
That is, you're like, man, I wouldn't want to answer that question. Gosh, the top thing, I think, well, and it kind of comes back to what I said in the beginning. Like, you can do a lot in the mind. Like, our minds are very powerful. We are the creators of everything. We are not just perceiving reality, we're literally creating it every single day. And I think when you don't ditch the body, when you bring the body and all of its wisdom with you, and you stop trying to fight yourself and you really embrace that and use that as a superpower, you don't have to have limitation. Like, we don't have to be limited by the labels we have, ADHD, OCD, all these things. Like, when you step into who you really are and you take the time to honor that physically, mentally, spiritually, all of that comes together, you will literally be unstoppable. Like, I can tell you from my perspective now, I write this every single day. I have an I am statement and it lights me up and I feel emotionally connected to it. And I believe that 100%. Before, it was like, okay, nice mindset stuff. Now it's like, we are all on board. When I say we, it's like my mind, my heart, my soul. Like, we're not schizophrenic. We're just all here. And that'll make a world of difference. Like, you will be shocked at what you're capable of when you bring the body along, when you take the time to go through the emotional regulation that your body needs so that you can unlock all these parts of you that are capable of creating so much and massive impact and connection with people. You don't have to remove yourself. I think that's one of the biggest things is your true freedom comes because you don't have to change circumstances. You've just changed from within. And now how you show up in everything you do is a million times more powerful. So that's kind of the wrap up I would give.
That's very well said. I love that. People need to hear that because we so often limit ourselves, and just hearing that you're wildly capable, so much more capable of than what we give ourselves credit for. So thank you for sharing that. I know our listeners are going to just love this episode. So what is next for you? How can listeners connect with you and learn more about what you're doing?
Okay. Yeah. We've got a couple places. Mentioned it a few times. If you guys are looking for good, I mean, when I say good, we're not just talking strategy. There are so many different episodes with amazing entrepreneurs. So good inspiration and strategy, go to millionaireuniversity.com. We're putting out so many episodes. And then for me personally, if you want to work with me, I have a coaching membership that I can help you work through some of these things. It's like a daily practice. We do weekly coaching, and you can find out more information on my Instagram, Kirsten Tyrell, or my website is kirstentyrell.com.
Awesome. And we will put all of those links in the show notes. If you want to check those out, then you can look there. So Kirsten, thank you so much for blessing us and being on the She Sells Differently podcast. And I look forward to being on Millionaire University in a few weeks as well. So
can't wait to have you. Thank you so much, Andee. It was so fun.
Yes. And tune in next Wednesday for another episode of the She Sells Differently podcast. Until then, we are cheering you on. All right, that's a wrap on today's episode of She Sells Differently. Friends, it would be a huge blessing to me if you would take 2 seconds to rate and subscribe to my podcast. New episodes drop every Wednesday. Until then, I'm cheering you on in your entrepreneurial journey. See you next time.